What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Action Network podcast. I am your host, Evan Abrams, and I am joined by, as always, by Action Network NFL expert Chris Raybon. We're going to give out more draft grades today, but as we did last episode, we're doing it a little bit differently, a little bit of categories, some sections. I'll go over them in a second, but first, we're going to do the NFC. We did the AFC last time, so that episode is up. Check it out, and we go through every team, all the categories, some fun stuff. But Raybon, what the heck is going on, man? How are you?
What's up, Evan? We're here for our NFC episode. The AFC one was fun. I think the AFC, just because of all the quarterback drama, had was a little more kind of attention grabbing. But I thought the NFC had some under the radar, really good drafts and some big surprises. So can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, the only thing I noticed when just literally going through everything is if you look at the running backs that were taken, Genty at 6 to the Raiders, 22 Hampton to the Chargers. Then you had Junkins, Henderson, Harvey, Caleb Johnson. If you notice anything, the first NFC team to take a running back was Scadaboo in the fourth round for the Giants. So, like the first 7 picks, running backs all went to the AFC. Something I just noticed while going through it, but that is exactly the randomness and fun we are going to go through today. So, we are going to do a bunch of categories here. So, the first is most impactful picks in the draft. Then, we're going to talk about the picks that surprised you the most. Then some big misses, and we're going to end with message in a bottle, which is basically a little bit of prediction on the future. So, like last time, Raybon, NFC, most impactful picks started off.
So I'm going to go with one that's, I think it's being criticized by some, and it's Atlanta. In the first round, I actually like them getting, these dual players that they could slot in at the front seven. We know they've needed a pass rush in like forever, so they get Jalen Walker out of Georgia at the 15th pick of the first round, and then they get James Pierce Jr. at the 26th. Now they do trade back up to get him out of Tennessee, but these are two, I think, potentially high impact players that could make an impact right away. And Atlanta is a team that feels like it has its quarterback of the future. They've spent a ton of high draft capital at the skill positions over the past 4 years. And the line has been solid on offense, but it's really been about in the defensive trenches. This is kind of a reset here with Grady Jarrett, the longtime anchor for them. Kind of moving on, and they really just needed impact players up front and in what I think can be a wide open division. So I actually think that, and it could kind of backfire on them as well, but. That's why I think this round one haul for Atlanta is going to be very impactful one way or another.
Again, just like the AFC, my team at the top was the Falcons too. So we did kind of have the same read here. And it's really surprising. They only had 5 picks. And I feel like with those 5 picks, at least definitely in the top 3 for me and probably top 4, they really had impact, right? Like, so Walker, Pierce, and Watts are all going to start.
Mm-hmm.
I like all 3 of those picks. And even Bowman probably be maybe back up to Alford. Maybe he gets into the mix. He's out there a bunch, depending on how it goes. But I really, listen, I think from the outside looking in, Atlanta had done everything from a skill position point of view. That's the direction they had been, draft after draft. From Pitts to Robinson, like all from London, like that was the direction they headed. So I think everyone was assuming this was going to be a defensive draft. It would have been fun to be able to maybe try to gamble on how many defensive players they were going to take, because I think we were all assuming this is the direction, and I think it worked. So I'm really excited to see how these guys kind of mesh together, and I think they're more of a complete team than they were.
Yeah, you have Bates at safety already. You have Terrell at corner, so you have some pieces that you're kind of building around at really each level. And so yeah, this we've been waiting, like every year they kind of make some moves in the offseason and is this going to turn around the defense? And it very well may not, but I thought getting aggressive toward that end, especially after again 4 straight years was it of skill guys in the top 10. Yeah, I can't knock it. And, if they whiffed on it, it's going to hurt as well. So I think one way or another, this is going to be a very impactful draft for Atlanta, because once they traded back into the first round, definitely kind of cemented it.
But it was the right direction. I think they needed to do this, so I'm happy to see it, and let's see how it goes. All right, team number 2. What do you got?
The Bears, I think they're round 1 and 2 skill position haul. You get two guys who should contribute right away in tight end Colston Loveland at the 10th overall pick of the draft in the first round out of Michigan. And then you go with Luther Burden, the third out of Mizzou early in the second round, a really explosive, kind of fun prospect who was really jumping up some people's boards, and some people are really high on him and think he was even underrated and could have even been a first round prospect. So I think with Ben Johnson, with Caleb Williams there, and you already got some veterans that are going to kind of make this transition a little easier for guys like Loveland and Burden. You got Cole Kmet there, you got DJ Moore there, you got Odunze, a top 10 prospect at wide receiver from last year, and you rebuilt that offensive line. So I think that you put these guys in a good spot where it's not too much pressure, but at the same time, they're talented enough that they could be major contributors right away. I mean, there's a chance that a guy like Burden could be better than Odunze. There's a good chance that Loveland is going to be a more impactful pass catcher than Cole Kmet right off the bat. So really, really think Chicago being able to go out and address the skill positions because of what they did at offensive line in the offseason really kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, I mean, especially from like a fantasy point of view, I mean, there's a lot of ways to look at this. I mean, if you're talking about impactful picks, I mean, this is hard not to be. And the Bears are also sending a direct message, which is let's get Caleb a little more help, a little more protection. Like the focus is all there to make his life a little easier based off what they've seen. And you just went off with all those different names. I mean, they have there's a lot of skill players on this roster now. So, I mean, Chicago's going to get a lot of love. I think a lot of people are going to see what they did in the draft. And I even like Turner, with that fourth pick there at the defensive tackle position, I think he's going to be decent. So I even like a little bit of help on the defensive side. So some people giving a little bit of middle tier grades to Chicago, but I like it. So, all right, what's your third?
Gotta be the Eagles. They get Jod Campbell at Alabama at 131. And listen, this is a guy that they're saying some people thought he had top 10 talent in the draft. Now it's not a premium position necessarily, but I'm hearing they might try to use him a little bit like Micah Parsons. And I just think, Howie getting these talented guys from these very established programs that just fall into his lap each and every year. I just got to give them props because I think, especially for what the Eagles are, and you look at their defense and their roster and a spot that they could, use a guy like this. I just think, there was a lot of picks that Philly had, and there maybe wasn't, because of where they're picking, a chance to, make too much impact. They're coming off a Super Bowl win. They have a great roster already, but I think this was one of those spots where it could have a major impact. And it's just again, another example of a great value who could also be an actual difference maker for this Eagle team. And then, they're another team. They went defense with their first, 4 or 5 picks. And, you had Alabama, Texas, Georgia. I mean, you're getting guys from very established programs here. So it might not jump off the page, and maybe the positions, don't jump off the page necessarily for what the Eagles did. But number one, you got to give some of the benefit of the doubt to Howie. But number two, I just think getting Campbell, who was sliding a little bit, was just a perfect way to kind of, jumpstart this draft class after coming off a Super Bowl win.
Yeah, I'm shaking my head because it's just every year, especially like Alabama, this guy was sliding and you knew it was happening. And then they trade up one slot and you're like, oh, we know what's happening here. I guess the only thing I would say is 3 linebackers, Campbell, Mondon, and Powell Ryland. And I like Powell Ryland a lot, but I think it makes sense with Dean Hurt a little bit. They are seeing a need and trying to fill it. And I think Campbell's going to help a lot there. I like their draft. And I think Philly does it again. So, I mean, I especially at this point, like, you're at the top. You just won the Super Bowl. You didn't lose a ton. It's time to just add where you don't have. And I think they did a good job of that. So, all right, those are your 3. Let me just roll through. So at least in the NFC, I have more good than I have bad. I seem to just like a lot of things in the NFC, so this one was a little bit top heavy for me. But I kind of just like Seattle in general. Like I like Zabel, I like Eamon. I think back to back 1-2 really really helpful on both sides of the ball. So I mean, aside from that, I can criticize maybe one or two things, but at the top, really just loved what Seattle did.
Yeah.
Um,
Athletes everywhere. I like the Milrow
yeah,
pick as well. You got
yeah.
maybe use him like Taysom Hill or something like that.
I mean, I just think at that point, quarterbacks, I mean, it was interesting. I think Shador kind of took everything over, and I think you need to take a step back and kind of see some of these slots that the other quarterbacks went. So I agree, Milrow's interesting. All right, the Rams, they had no first round picks. In six picks, got probably 4 to 5 second stringers, made them deeper all over the place. I think given the picks they had, I think they did a good job. I like Ferguson at tight end. I think he could start possibly next to Higbee, or I think he could probably be the future there for them potentially. And Stewart and Chris Paul Jr. at linebackers, I thought was also good moves for them. I just think based off of what they had, they did a good job. Um, Carolina and McMillan. I mean, I was a McMillan fan for a while. We had talked about, some of the plus odds, him to go top 10. I just think, the negatives on him didn't outweigh the skill set and the measurables and the things he could possibly make Bryce Young's life just easier overall. I mean, next to Leggett, Coker, Moore. Now they've got Thielen. They've got just like I think then they just bring in Renfro. They have a ton of different options that they're just giving Carolina and Bryce Young to try to see what works. But I think McMillan is right at the top. So I love the pick myself. I have two more here. Minnesota. I'm a fan of Donovan Jackson. I think it's a good pick at a good slot. I think it's a need for the team. I think he's going to do well protecting JJ. And I just think it's an impactful pick that will mean something to Minnesota. So to me, that's on my list. I think it's worth it. I would be curious what you think about that because I think people have a little bit of both sides there. But next to Darius on the left side, I think it's going to help. And Ty Felton, I thought I can't get a good picture there. I mean, I keep looking at the pick, looking at some of the measurables and this and that. Like it kind of is what it is. They're a little crowded in that room, but to me, Jackson's the interesting one. Any thought with Minnesota?
Yeah, I think they kind of got criticized just because of the lack of picks more than
Sure.
the players themselves. But it's I don't have a problem with any of their picks. I think they've kind of gained some of the benefit of the doubt. Just to, they're a really smart team, well coached team. So I think whoever does go there, even probably some of the late rounders, one of those guys could hit even more than we think. They got a couple of guys in round 6 at linebacker and tight end that maybe could be better than we thought. You got Dawkins on the edge in the beginning of round 5 out of Georgia. So I overall they just didn't have that many picks. I think that's why they're getting criticized. We'll talk more about Carolina and the Rams because I do have some alternate thoughts to those guys. But as far as Minnesota goes, yeah, I just think it's hard to fully come down too hard on them either way because they really don't. They only have that one pick late in the first, and then not another pick until the third, and then nothing in the fourth either. So just not a lot to go off of.
And my last team, another team with just 5 picks, was Washington. I don't think their picks really fit a category for me. So I kind of just tossed them here at biggest impactful at the end because I like Connerly and I like Amos. I kind of wanted Amos to go first round. We had talked about that on the Draft Bets pod, but I think they both are good and fit needs for Washington. So I think in terms of having an impact, I think it makes sense. But again, just 5 picks from Washington, so a little bit of a difficult thing to assess. I think the only thing as well as cost me tearing his ACL in the playoff game against the Lions. So we have to see based off of that, which is why, I mean, I'm sure they were looking offensive line as well. But I'll let you roll to pick surprise unless you have anything on Washington.
No, I thought Washington, I mean, it's, they didn't have many picks. They clearly drafted for need, so it just puts a lot of pressure on them to hit. I think Connerly and Amos were good picks, and we'll see about the rest, in terms of the value. But there is a little bit more pressure maybe than we thought was going to be on Washington to hit early
That's
on,
fair.
even though it seemed kind of like, they had some different some options. But I do like overall that you went offensive line and cornerback with your first 2 picks. I think those, if I was going to pick the positions, I think those two would have been the ones that I would have picked for them to address. So
Cool.
all right. Surprising picks. I mean, I have to start with Tyler Shuck out of Louisville going to the Saints early second round. Went over some other quarterback prospects that people thought were going to go ahead of him. It was an interesting pick too because we already, your first round pick, you kind of paid the offensive line tax a little bit, going Banks higher than I think up until the day of the draft. I don't think anyone had Banks going that high, so it was just interesting, to take such a big risk again. And then they're saying like Carr is not really influencing this, but it's okay. Well, you have Carr, you have Rattler, you still have Hayner on the roster. So like, if this is a whiff, this roster has a lot of holes, and you're already kind of drafted for need in the first round. So it was just surprising to me that they went that direction with the quarterback that they did. Any thoughts on Shuck and the Saints and just their draft strategy in general?
Top of my list. There, he was number one in terms of how I was just questionable. I mean, we were all caught in the Shador whirlwind, the tornado. But I think when this one went off the board, we said to ourselves, oh boy, what's going to happen with Shador? And then everyone was like, oh wait, this is actually also just a questionable pick overall. So I agree that is a little bit odd. I wasn't a fan of his from the start. I think, listen, at pick 40, I think it was a tad early for him. I think it was probably best to go a little bit later, but they saw something they liked. And I think they had to take a quarterback. It's the same thing as Denver, right? We pegged Denver at 20 to take a running back. They decided they didn't want him at 20, and then they found another running back. Everyone said, oh, they have to take Shador at 9. Well, we were sort of right. Like, they didn't need a quarterback. They just liked somebody else and waited a little bit and got Banks with him. So, I think we just have to wait and see. But he's at the top of my list just based off of the measurables, let's call it.
Yeah, and another team that I was pretty surprised, and not necessarily a bad thing, but Green Bay going with 2 wideouts in their first 3 picks after, they really haven't done that. Now, I think the thing that was more surprising, number one, I didn't expect Golden to fall that far. Can't knock the pick.
Yeah, you liked him early, man.
Yeah, I liked him early. Then they go Savion Williams out of TCU in round 3 at wide receiver. In between, they get Belton out of NC State. So, for Green Bay, it's just, did they? It does kind of create the question mark though of you supposedly had 4 wide receivers you liked already on the roster in Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Romeo Doubs, and Watson. I know Watson is probably going to miss the year, so maybe that factored in. But I'm just curious as to what the plan is here. Is there a trade coming, or what? And because you did spend for a team that's kind of in that second tier in terms of contenders, really trying to make that jump into the elite contender list of the NFC. And maybe they feel like they're already there, but it was interesting to just go with the position that you felt like maybe you didn't have any stars, but you definitely had some depth at that position, and you had a quarterback you felt good about. So, curious as to how, going with 2 wide receivers on the first 2 days of the draft works out for them. And, that it was just a surprising, especially for them to kind of double up with Williams, but it was also surprising for Golden to fall that far. So just kind of, I think the jury's out on Green Bay. I don't know if I feel like they necessarily made a jump based on this draft, but they were also in a position where they were solid all the way around and could kind of go with who they felt was at the top of their board each pick. So this could also be looked back on as a very good draft class. So I'm kind of just torn here with the Packers. Any thoughts?
I was considering, they're number 2 on my list here too. I considered making them a big miss. I decided not to. I think it's just ironic at this point. Like, we waited 2 decades for Green Bay to do this, and then they do it when we feel like they probably shouldn't. And they have depth at the position. I think Watson was the key one you mentioned. Like, did they do this because he's gone and they felt like they, with Dobbs and Reed and Wicks, they needed someone else? Did they see Kansas City take someone really fast and it went well and they were like, well, we need to do this? Like it's just a little odd on the golden pick. And I also have to say, he could have gone a lot earlier. So it's like I'm not even like debating the draft position because this is where he was slated to go. I think I'm just debating using the capital from Green Bay's point of view on the pick in general. And then I think if you roll back a little bit, I think the Xavier Williams pick is it probably would have been a miss for me. I don't love the selection. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't see it at that position, especially when, again, Green Bay's in a luxury spot. Like they're a little Eaglesy. Like they've got a bunch of stuff. They should be trying to get, I think, more depth and better players at different positions than that. Maybe that's just me. So to me, I'm agreeing with you. Like it's a questionable draft for Green Bay for me.
Yeah, it could work out really well though, because again, like even things like the Jordan Love pick didn't look great at the time. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I'm not going to completely write it off, and I do like Golden, but just in totality, some of the way they kind of use some of the early round capital with two guys at wide receiver could go a bunch of different ways for a team that's like right there. Because again, like those day one and day two picks tend to be the ones that are going to have the impact. And
sure.
yeah, they did have a bunch of day three guys, and maybe they get a couple of diamonds in the rough there, but you got to be a little more critical of the early round guys. So that's why I'm a little, kind of jury's still out for Green Bay.
I agree, sort of. All right, two more people for me on this list, and I'm going to go through this one very quickly because you're going to hit on him again in a second. Emeka Egbuka, I just think is a surprising pick on a few levels. I mean, when you look into it a little bit more, when you look at the contracts, you look at, some of those things that, maybe 1 year, 2 year mentor, and then Evans or Godwin somewhere else, like it's all possible. It just felt like, again, kind of like Green Bay. It was like you could have used this pick on something else. I think you're going to have more of an opinion on this in a second, so I'm going to leave it there. And then my last one, I mean, it's a surprise just based off of, I guess, the prospect itself and how much he slid, but I thought Will Johnson was a little bit of a surprise. Like we had been talking about him as the number one corner. I think a few days before the draft, we started to realize his slip, and we saw Barron kind of moving up boards, and we assumed that he might go second at that point. But at 47, I think it's just surprising. I think it could be a really good pick for Arizona. So I would be closer to put him on impactful than I would on big miss. But to me, he fits the surprising category. Any thoughts on both of those?
Yeah, I think it was just how far he slid was a little bit surprising. Just because of where he was for the majority of the offseason as that cornerback one. And, maybe you saw that late steam on Barrett, but he still fell pretty far. But this is one of those draft classes which could be very, I guess, impactful if he hits, because this is another one of these teams that went defense with their first 5 picks, so they have Kyler Murray. Harrison was kind of disappointing, but you feel like the offense should be solid. You didn't add any more weapons to the offense, so you have some blue chips guys in McBride. You feel like, the running back situation's in good hands. You feel like Harrison should come on at wide receiver, and Murray should, maybe he hasn't played his best football yet, but it's just interesting to me that, defense, they just went all in on defense. So it could look really good, or they could just kind of stay in their purgatory if they whiff on some of these picks. So I think this is another one that will be impactful one way or another. It's just, the jury's out whether it be purely positive or it could be negative as well.
Yeah, as a full package, I kind of like what Arizona did. I like what 3 of the 4 NFC West teams did, and that's a tease for a little bit later.
Do you ever watch sports and find yourself wishing there was a way to get into the game? With Underdog, there's finally a way to make picks on sports without leaving the crib. The game is in your hands to play. Choose whether a player will go higher or lower than one of their stats. We're talking touchdowns, strikeouts, points scored, all that good stuff. They've got all your favorite leagues, teams, and stars to choose from. Create entries with all NFL picks or mix and match across other sports. You can play with as little as $1. And if you get everything right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn $1 into 1,000 just with your sports knowledge. And Underdog is really, really fun for the amount of sports that they have. Every single day, you can kind of choose to mix and match from. And I also really love their best ball product as well. It's my favorite one. I've been playing all off season. Tend to have a lot of teams. We're talking hundreds when it's by the time it's all said and done, heading into the 2025 NFL season. So be sure to download the Underdog app and sign up now using the promo code Action Network, ACTION NETWORK, and you can unlock a special offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit. Join in on the fun when you sign up with promo code Action Network and claim your special offer today and get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly upon your first deposit. Must be 18 plus and 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXTSTEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY.
And after the draft, it is best ball season. So you are in your lane. I can't wait to start seeing your stuff and start tailing all your crap. Big misses. So what do you got here? Roll off some teams.
So I didn't like the Carolina draft.
Okay.
I didn't like, and again, with Ted McMillan, I think it's more so that obviously there were the questions about, some like his dedication and this and that, but I don't know if we're just still at a point in the NFL where we need to be taking wide receiver prospects like him at the spot that Carolina did. And I do know that Carolina tried really hard to trade out of that number 8 pick to the point where
that's fair.
They were offering reportedly offering discounts, to get out of number 8, probably because I think McMillan may have been available a little bit later than we thought, especially if Tampa Bay had Ibuka higher than everyone else on the board. And I mean, if Dallas fades a wide receiver too, you never know. It could have been McMillan and Golden on the board for Green Bay late in the first round. So I just think I think they would have ideally liked to trade out. I think they would have ideally liked to address the defensive side of the ball then, but they kind of looked at, the board and said, okay, well, if we're staying here, based on if it was that hard to trade out of, I guess that 8th pick, they were figuring, all right, we're probably gonna, this is kind of what we're gonna do here. And they kind of tried to fill a need but it's like another thing issue I have with the pick is Carolina is one of those teams that they don't really have that guy that keeps you up at night if you're a defensive coordinator, right? Like they have a bunch of solid guys, all like, Chuba Hubbard and that receiving core even before, you had Leggett and you had Coker came on, but I thought they could have actually used more of an Ibuka or a Matthew Golden type of player, like, just somebody that's a little bit more explosive versus I know what they're going for. Yeah, I know what they're going for. Wide receiver 1, guy who's going to catch some contested passes, and it could just be fine. But I just think at that draft capital, and with knowing that they wanted to trade out, knowing that they really had a need on the edge and there were edge rushers available there, high-end edge rushers, and then they end up going and taking, edge rushers, they double up in round day 2, and you just wonder, did they kind of feel like their hand was forced a little bit because of what they did here? So I just think it could all work out in the end, but I would have, just based on the type of player, based on where he went, based on what we know about what they were trying to do with the pick, and based on their needs, that draft class was a miss for me for Carolina.
I think all you're saying is that you would prefer them to do like Michael Williams and Luther Burden versus like do it a little bit differently, right? Like get the position somewhere else. All right, talk about Ibuka because I think this one's fascinating.
Yeah, so and listen, I like the player, but I still have to grade this as a miss for Tampa Bay because I think, just given their offensive infrastructure and what they've shown over the past couple of years with, coaches moving on and it keeps chugging. I think they could have also afforded to wait on wide receiver, picked up one of those higher upside prospects on day 2 or 3, and he would have kind of fit right in. But instead, they go and Ibuka also. Let's not forget at 19, he was probably a reach compared to most teams' draft boards as well, and most draft boards that we saw had him going at the highest in the early to mid 20s. Don't think wide receiver was a major need. And I know this team is, they had an amazing offense last year, but I just thought, given how well their offense played and already and what they've had in position and the depth of the draft at running back and receiver later on, they could have just addressed the skill positions a little bit later and gone with a guy like they could have used a guy like Jahdae Barron at corner. I think they ended up going up a corner later on. They could have even a guy like Harmon, they were just, I think, impact players on defense that they passed up on because they really liked this wide receiver. And it's not a knock on the wide receiver, but just based on, where he went, based on team need, based on who they passed up, and then based on how they kind of addressed the draft later on, where it looks like then they drafted really strongly for need. Down the line, I don't like how they started it off going with Ibuka at 19.
Yeah, I think it's the same discussion. They take cornerback with Morrison and Parrish after Ibuka. And then the question you have is, all right, at 19, Ibuka goes, then Barron goes at 20 and Harmon at 21. So it was just like, could you have taken one of those two guys and then found a Burden or something like that? It's the same question as we just had with Carolina. It's just, you decided to take this player and then you went another direction. I don't mind Morrison and Parrish. Like, I think both of them will be just fine at their positions and they were rated fine as well. Like, I don't hurt the picks. It's a preference draft. And I think we have been talking about that for weeks. Okay. Who is your third slot here?
Yeah. So again, I think we disagree with on this. I just wasn't overly impressed with the Rams. I know that, they felt like they got a really good offer to come out of the first round. And then, they go with tight end Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon with their first pick of the draft in the middle of round 2. So listen, for a team like the Rams that you're on kind of you're in must-win mode, but you're definitely not in that top tier of contenders. I just thought that maybe they didn't come away with enough. And you pointed out that they did take some good prospects, on day 3. But again, you're putting a lot of pressure, and they've hit in the past on some of these guys, so you do give them some of the benefit of the doubt here. I won't argue with that, but I do think that for a team that's trying to contend right now, that still has consistently found themselves like a tier below that top tier ever since that Super Bowl win a couple years ago, to start out tight end and running back with 2 of their top 3 picks, no round 1 pick. It just puts a lot of pressure on the other guys you drafted to be really good. So I think there's more downside than maybe meets the eye with the Rams draft class.
Yeah, I think it's a role player draft for them. And I think you can knock that all you want because I guess you're right. Like they're, pretty close. They were close last year and they should be trying to draft more impactful players. But the Rams always seem to make these types of decisions. So it's like I can't even really get in the way of what they're doing here. Okay, so let me go through a few of my misses. We said this on our recap, and I'm going to say it again, but like Tyler Booker just feels a tad early for them, especially when we had been talking, and I'm talking about the Cowboys. I just feel like there was another option there. Maybe it was Golden. Maybe it was, I wanted a skill player on that team versus, obviously retirements, free agency, like all certain things made them probably think they needed the position, and they did. He was valued in like the mid 20s. I just felt like it was a tad early for him. So that's number one. I kind of feel like the 49ers draft after Williams is questionable. So like I like the Williams pick. I understand it playing on that line. And listen, they have 11 draft picks. So there is plenty of chances for them to hit on someone. But I just think like Stout was a little bit of a reach. I don't love Collins. So like I don't love the Niners draft after that, but they have plenty of players to prove me wrong going forward. I have one more, but any thoughts on those two?
Yeah, I thought I was going to hate Dallas a lot more than I did. I just
think he's a reach. Like I didn't, sometimes you go, the fan base wants the skill player. they pick up someone else, the fan base is upset, but in reality, the position that they picked up was a good pick, right? Like it helps this, it helps that. I just don't know if I feel that way about Booker, but maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, when you consider, so I think in retrospect, like looking at the whole board, if you knew that Zabel was going to go 18th and then Jackson 24th, you know, I think they probably just properly valued Booker. I think
Maybe that's
it
a
was
good way to
just,
look at it.
he was kind of looked at because, guard isn't necessarily like a premium pick. He was a little bit down on people's boards, but I think in terms of like floor, I think they got a rock solid pick. And then I thought really the first three players, and Dallas tends to do well drafting, like not necessarily going with consensus, but just going with kind of the best guys on the board and letting things kind of play out. Like draft tends to not be Dallas's issue. They have issues when it comes to
No, you're right.
management in person, but draft. So I'll give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, and I will say after seeing like Zabel and Jackson go where they did, it probably looks a little better. So and then seeing Golden fall, for example,
Sure.
as well. Even Hampton fell a couple of spots from where teams had Dallas taking him as well. So I mean, you would like to have come out of the draft with more impact skill guys. And
that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, I think in a draft like this where there were those, even if you did start the draft the way you did for Dallas, I think there were opportunities still to do that. And that's where you could criticize them, but I'm at peace with their first three picks. I think their first three picks are pretty solid.
Yeah, I like Ezeraku, Revel, Blue. I think they're all fine. I think Booker was a tad early, so that's the pick I would scrutinize, and it was first. All right. The last team I'll mention here, and this is a little controversial because, I mean, they tend to draft their guys, but Isaac Tesla is a guy for Detroit that they traded up for. I believe they traded 3 third-round picks to come up. To me, it was just a little bit early for a position that is sort of a need, but sort of not. It felt a little bit odd to me. So that was one that I had kind of looked at that I thought was a little strange. And I've seen some tape. I looked at the measurables. Like, he's a good receiver. It just felt like an interesting trade up situation. So that was my last one.
Yeah, I mean, they're in kind of a position of power. They can kind of do this kind of thing, and they tend to know offense. So
it's hard to
knock it too much.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, they're going to prove me wrong, and he's just going to be fantastic. I just felt like trading up in that slot felt a little odd. There were other receivers I might have preferred at 70, but that's it. So those are my big misses. And now let's finish here. So message in a bottle. And if you weren't in last episode, it's simple. We are burying a bottle. We'll bring it up in 10 years. We have to write 2 names on the bottle, a player who will be good to great, and we will consider a good to great draft pick, and a player who will be considered either a bust or someone we overvalued at their draft position. Raybon, I'll let you go first. Hit it.
Abdul Carter, edge rusher for the New York Giants. Now, the reason I say Carter is because Cam Ward, that went number 1, almost universally wasn't considered the best prospect in the class. So he could have been overdrafted even if he was, it makes sense based on team need for Tennessee and all that stuff. And then when you look at what the Jaguars gave up to go and get Travis Hunter, that could be, that could kind of skew that a little bit. So I think it was widely looked at that it was, Hunter and Carter, along with, maybe Genty were the top 3. Maybe you had Graham in there as the 4th guy, but like those were the blue chip prospects in this class. And I think the Giants ended up being the team that really didn't pay any type of tax, right? They didn't pay the quarterback tax and they didn't pay the trade up tax, and they still got a blue chip prospect at 3. They didn't make the mistake of, people had them taking Shador here. He ended up lasting to the 5th round. So they didn't make a mistake by grabbing a quarterback too early. They avoided all these things, and they got one of the few blue chip prospects in this class didn't pay any tax. So I think that pick stands out to me.
Okay, go to your other one, then I'll give my 2.
Okay, so for a guy who will be considered either a bust or someone way overvalued, I got to go with McMillan. I just think you could have gone a different route. I don't think this type of player at wide receiver is just valued as much. I think it's much more, it's trending toward that worthy type of player who, even if he doesn't have all of the the things you tend to look for in a prospect, it's just that speed kind of outweighs it all. And I think for Carolina, a team that didn't really have that speed prospect, that guy in the roster that's going to play a ton of snaps for them, at least as it looks right now, that's going to keep coordinators up at night. I just think that you might look back and say McMillan's a guy that you could have gotten on day 2 or something like that. So yeah, McMillan for me.
If you look at the top 10, and I'm just going to mention this on McMillan, he is probably the easiest one to select to say maybe in 10 years he wasn't the best pick. Because I feel like a lot of other people are at positions that they should have some production, while I think McMillan's is, high upside, but also there's a basement there. All right, my players, I'll start with the good. I mean, Campbell is an easy one to me to probably say in a bunch of years he's going to be great for the Eagles, because how could he not? The other ones were Imanwari. I love that pick for Seattle. I liked Amos for Washington. I even liked Revel for Dallas and Watts. I liked a lot of the secondaries in the NFC. I thought some of those picks were good. I will land on Imanwari. I think that pick for Seattle will be good in that in that low second round. I think it'll just look good over time. I think it'll be a good pick. On the bad side, I'm not going to say Booker, because I just don't think it's that bad. And I think a guard like that will, plugging into a position of need is just going to be fine for Dallas versus great. I think it's probably Shuck from New Orleans. Like, I think you'll look back and say they probably could have went another direction at quarterback. Carr will work or won't work. And I just don't know if Shuck's the answer. So those are my 2 picks. Any thoughts on that? And then you can get us out of here.
Yeah, I mean, New Orleans, I think they're one of the most interesting teams, because again, they, even in the first round, they may have paid the tax on the O-line.
That's true.
And then to go Shuck, and then they went, not only did they go quarterback early in a draft where quarterbacks slid, they did go, to be fair, he is considered like a pro ready guy. So, but that's also interesting, because it's like, where are you? You had a lot of holes. Are you trying to play this guy right away? And then was he just kind of like, did Carr influence it after all? So just a lot of question marks for me with New Orleans. But can't say I'm super optimistic right now, especially with the Bucks still, even after that Ibuka pick that I don't love. I mean, their offense is still going to be tough to stop. Carolina's only going to get better, and Atlanta may have solved their defensive issues. So New Orleans in a tough spot.
Yeah, and Buka and McMillan next to each other, even without Evans and Godwin, is fun. So they'll be good. All right. Let's get out of here now. That has been the Action Network podcast. We did AFC draft grades. This is NFC draft grades. Check out both episodes, and we will be back soon to talk more NFL action here on the Action Network podcast. I am Evan Abrams. That is Chris Raybon, and go get that shmoney.